Hey everybody, this is Perch, and I'm here with Joe Corallo. How you doing, Joe?
I'm all right, Perch. How are you?
I'm doing great. We've got a very special guest here, somebody who's written, more than 1,000 comics, and certainly a lot of my favorites. Paul Kupperberg. How are you doing today?
Well, I'm eating a Cadbury Easter egg, so
Perfect.
I'm doing pretty good. I'm doing well, thank you. And yourself?
Doing very well. We're really grateful to get to talk to you, and somebody who's really been a major part of the industry, and like I said, written so many books over kind of your career. You're doing some new stuff now. We're going to talk about that as well. But
Sure.
but yeah, tell us. You got started pretty early in your career with DC.
Well, I actually started at Charlton Comics.
Yeah. Yeah.
In fact, today, while we're recording this on April 3rd, is my 46th pro-versary.
Very nice.
I made my first sale on this date in 1975. I was 19. I was in college, and coming out of fanzines and Fandom and stuff, I found myself, suckering a bunch of people into buying stuff from me.
There you go.
Excellent. And at 19, it's a lot of the people we've talked to talk about getting into comics pretty young. Today that would be a much tougher barrier of entry, wouldn't it?
I think so. Because today I think they're looking for your name to come with, to be attached to something, to have some kind of, previous cred to it. So, that would be young. There were a couple of people started younger than me. I think Conway was 16.
Yeah.
Paul Levitz was 6. It's amazing. He was 17.
Yeah.
But back then it was more likely to happen.
And what was it like? I guess so. You were a comic fan. I'm assuming before you started, making money from comics. Yeah.
Yeah.
How was that going from kind of fan to working? Did it feel different, or So we've talked to other people who describe kind of this transition into actually working for comics as just being an extension of the fun. It didn't change for you.
There's some of that. I got into Fandom around 1970. Paul Levitz, who I mock as often as I can. We met in middle school. We were like,
Wow.
Actually, I was at Paul Levitz's bar mitzvah. That's how long ago we met. And he did very well, Baruch Hashem. So, so we got together and we were friends, and we started doing these, crappy crud zines, checklists of the Avengers and things like that.
Yeah.
And then, Xeroxing and mimeograph and whatever was around.
Yeah.
Then we got ambitious in 1971 at 15, 16 years old. Don and Maggie Thompson, who, major fans, actually were there at the beginning of comics fandom. They came in, out of science fiction fandom, which was organized, 30 years before we were.
Yeah.
They had a fanzine called Beautiful Balloon. And
okay.
It was a mimeographed monthly, and it was, reviews and articles and this and that, but they also ran a news section. And at the time, they were pretty much the only news fanzine out there. The Comic Reader had gone into hiatus. Actually, it had gone into a shoebox in Mark Hannafeld's closet.
Real hiatus, yeah.
He was the editor. The Comic Reader started in 1960. It was started by Jerry Bales, who was another father and founder of Fandom, and Roy Thomas took it over. And of course, it has, in the form of Alter Ego, has been publishing it now for several years.
Yeah.
But we were, I think, the 7th publishers to inherit it. The title, and we took it over. And but at first we started something called Etc., which was a photo offset, 6-page folded over. Once folded over, pamphlet size. And we thought, well, we're in New York, we can actually get to the companies and have access to news and information. So we started that with, literally knowing nothing and $16 to print the thing. And
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, we sold and or mostly gave away, I think, like 75 copies of the first issue. But we also sent them to the major zines for reviews and stuff. And we sent a copy to Don and Maggie as well, and they reviewed us and gave us a very nice review. I kid Maggie that that she's responsible for both Levitz and I, because if they hadn't been nice to us, our fanzine folded and we would have gone away. But and then suddenly we had subscribers, and a few issues later, Hannerfeld came up and said, here's the shoebox, literally with money in what's known as sticky quarters back in the olden days. Because usually it was send in you could send postage stamps or 4 issues for a quarter, because I think postage was 6 cents.
Mm-hmm.
And so people would tape quarters to index cards or pieces of cardboard, and mail them to us. So you had to peel the tape off, and you had a lot of sticky quarters. And that just got it started. And then after 3 years of doing that, Paul started working at DC. He took a summer job in summer '73, and which turned into a slightly longer gig.
Slightly, just a little bit.
It lasted until like 2010.
Yeah, it's a nice little career.
Yeah. Well, one of us had to have one. So and then I started, trying to pitch my stuff. I went to Gold Key and, made a few contacts with the zines and new people, other professionals. And, it's like I met Len Wein and Marv Wolfman in, I think, 1968 on a DC tour back in the day when they used to give Thursday afternoons at 3:30, I think it was. They'd give a tour of the offices. And I met them there for the first time, so I've been around this stuff a very long time. Like I say, 46 years professionally, and whatever the decades were before that as a fan. But so it was kind of a natural thing. And then I sent some stuff to Charlton, and they bought it.
I love the entry, and I think I don't. Tell me if you think this is a true statement or not. It seems like during that time period and through most of the 70s and I think even the 80s, there was a lot of people who were doing what you did. They were making kind of fanzine kind of newsletters or magazines, or there was this artifact that was coming out of the fans that was delivering news and delivering thoughts and other things. And it felt like that built a generation of comic creators. And it feels like today there's still people online doing things, but it's different somehow. I've been trying to kind of quantify it's a very different thing.
There was kind of focus. You got a fanzine, and it was a labor. A lot of labor went into it. Now you click, type. Format, and you're done. Here's what it took to produce an issue of Etc. It was a Smith Corona manual typewriter, graph paper, glue sticks, and press type.
Yeah.
And we went big. We bought a burnisher so that we could really get the press type on nice. We would type out what we wanted in columns, and Paul being very, I was going to try to say it nicely, but Paul being very anal retentive wanted to do justified columns. So when you were typing, the only way to do justified columns was to type out your column. And then when you reach the end of the line, if there were empty spaces, you put like slashes or periods or whatever. And then you'd have to go back and retype everything, and you'd add empty spaces to get rid of the, slashes at the end of the line. So that was just typing it. Then you take I forgot the X-Acto knife. You take the X-Acto knife and a T-square. See, I'm forgetting all the important things.
No, I'm with you though. I did a lot of the same stuff.
And then you had to cut these this type up and paste it onto the. We used graph paper with non-repro glue lines on it because. So and then you had to adjust things and move things around, and then you had to manually create the titles for things with this stuff. It was a vinyl letters on some kind of other type of vinyl, and you'd rub it off the sheet onto the paper.
Yeah.
And God forbid you made a typo.
Yeah.
But
it was
but it was a lot of work. It took us, we spent a week of the month putting together the magazine,
I think I think you've hit on it. It's you had to be committed to doing it because it was going to take a lot of time. It wasn't something you could kind of casually fall into.
Right. And it was going to people who were laser focused, interested in in this thing.
Yeah.
They were asking for it. They were ordering it. They were paying for it. Or even if you were a member of an APA, which I was, Kappa Alpha and one called NIAPA. APAs are monthly. I guess they still. Kappa Alpha is still going. It's a monthly thing. There's 50 members in Kappa Alpha KA. Others have different rosters, but every month you produce your own printed fanzine. However, there's certain minimum activity you have to do, MINAC, that you need to do, and you sent 50 copies to a guy called a central mailer, and he or she would collate all 50 contributions or however many there were that month into big piles, and then mail them back to you.
Right.
But but like how useless is that these days?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I frankly, if we could get rid of Facebook and go back to doing that stuff, it would be a lot more fun.
I think for everybody, yeah.
But you also, you have to stop and think when you're doing that. You can't just throw shit against the wall and run away.
Yeah.
Like it's there, on the internet, you kind of like you're hiding behind the screen and you just say, whatever. I know.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you were a big comics fan growing up. Were you big into DC and then you ended up there? Yeah. So what were your DC titles you really enjoyed?
Well, Superman, all the Julie Schwartz stuff. I started reading comics around 59 or 60.
Mm-hmm.
The first thing I remember reading was Wonder Woman.
Mm-hmm.
Which, there was Mickey Mouse and that other stuff.
Sure, yeah.
Never Disney. I never trusted Disney. Too clean, too nice. Give me a good Warner Brothers cartoon.
Sure.
Now we're talking. But but in the comics, Wonder Woman back then was the Bob Kanigher, Andrew and Esposito stuff.
Yeah.
And Merboy and genies and dragons and it's kind of a fairy tale strip. So it was perfect for 5-year-old kids. But then I discovered Superman, and that was it.
Now, and you got to, you worked a lot with Julie Schwartz then, because you were there during his reign as editor. So what was he like? What was it like working with him?
It was a reign of terror. I worked with him in the late 80s. In the early 70s. His last years until I was working on Superman with when he was editor till the end. Julie was kind of he was gruff, but it was kind of like that that Lou Grant thing where like I get it, you're gruff, isn't that sweet? I was scared of him because he was like, what do you want? But after a while it was kind of like, oh, I get this guy, and I thought he was a sweetheart. I loved him. I am happy to say he was, not just an editor, but later on he became a friend. And So
yeah, I think one thing that's prevalent too often, especially with modern fandom, is this notion that Superman's not worth reading pre-crisis. It's the stuff after crisis, and diminish a lot of what happened pre-crisis. But I mean, there was a lot of stuff, contributions from people like you, Denny, Marv, Jose Luis Garcia Lopez, Gil Kane,
and Elliot Magan, and
yeah.
There was a lot of great stuff there.
Absolutely.
And Kurt Swan, Jesus, Kurt Swan, who's better than Kurt Swan, for Christ's sake? It's just.
Yeah. What are some stories, including your own, that you would point to, in the 70s and 80s before Crisis, that really stand out that Superman fans should read?
Boy, that's a tough one. It's hard to bring them up. I'm terrible at titles and numbers and stuff like that.
Well, your own stories you can describe. We'll figure them out.
Well, I don't have a lot of great Superman stories. I'm afraid.
You're being modest.
Yeah.
No. I didn't. It's just like I did a few that that I liked. There was one was an imaginary story. I think it was called Born to Be Superman, and it was Superboy loses his power at 16 or so and goes on to a normal life, and builds a supermarket chain out of Pa Kent's store and marries Lana, and and then at some point Luthor comes back and he has to face this and deal with. And I thought that turned out nicely. It was and Carmen Infantino drew it. Bob Oxford did it, so. That was a bonus. There was a couple of DC Comics presents that I thought came out all right. One with Madame Xanadu. That Gray Morrow drew. So again,
it helps. It's also, when it's a great team, both writer and artist, that also helps.
Well, I was going to say, Gray Morrow drawing it, even if it sucked, it looks good.
Yeah.
Like I did a Green Arrow story in DC Comics Presents, and I just thought it was like, it's just like, wow, what a piece of fluff. The smog monster, pollution, 1980s.
Yeah.
But Don Newton drew it.
Oh, wow.
People love the story, and I go, it's only because Don Newton drew it. If this was drawn by, Paul Reinman, you'd go, ooh, yeah.
Now, Superman did have some interesting powers at the time. Can you explain how we got super heart massage?
No. See, I think the quest for explanations of how and why the heroes do things has made comics, what has been comics decline.
Yeah.
You can't, like people say to me, you'll post a panel and they'll point out some, ridiculous thing, and I go, all right, so this is a story about a person who can fly through the sun, but that's what you decide to reality test.
Yeah.
So you can't reality test any part of them, because if you start picking at one thread, they do fall apart. You can't justify these characters.
I agree so much. Yeah.
But everybody tries so hard to explain it. It was like when Byrne, came out with his psychic, superpowers thing for Superman. It's all a mental whatever. It was like, no, shut up, sit down.
Yeah.
And it started with that. I didn't start there, but everybody that Julie Schwartz edited a story about Clark Kent's super hypnotic glasses.
Yeah.
Like, wow, why you try? And Marty Pasco, who's a dear friend of mine, was like, from the day he wrote it, was like, I didn't want to do this one. I really didn't. But
yeah.
You got to maintain this disbelief. I always think it's a trap when the writer. I see it a lot today with you want to comment on current real life social issues in comics, but you have to do it very carefully, because otherwise you're trying to explain why Superman is not
World War II in an hour.
It's just it's very, very difficult to do this.
Yeah. And speaking of things that are impossible to explain, you also contributed to the Legion of Superheroes, and there's a rabid fan base. I'm a big Legion fan as well. So if we don't ask you about Legion, people will pop in the comments being like, "Who's?" So tell us a bit about your experience with the Legion of Superheroes.
Yes, please.
Well, they summoned me to the 30th century because they needed help on this mission.
Yeah.
And I said, well, yeah, it was like I did a couple of 3 fill-ins during, I guess, Paul Levitz's first, kind of run on the title.
Yeah.
I did a few stories there, and then I did the what do you call it? The history of the Legion of Superheroes.
Yeah, it was like the secret history of the Legion of Superheroes.
The secret
origins, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so I did that, and that's my main contribution, I guess, to the Legion.
Yeah.
That was, it was a project I did with E. Nelson Bridwell. He kind of Nelson kind of plotted out the timeline, and and I wrote the script. Similarly, the way we did the World of Krypton miniseries. Nice. Yeah, it was interesting. I mean, I like the Legion. I had read them. They were Levitz's favorite group. So favorite comic. So growing up, I read his. I didn't have that stuff, but I read the run of it. So I was real familiar with it, and I liked the characters. But I mean, I never had a burning desire to write a strip with 92 characters.
A lot of people comment that writing the Legion is just, it's either daunting or impossible because you are juggling just a ridiculously huge cast. Is that?
It's doable. I mean, when I wrote the Life with Archie series, starting in 2009, and that was two storylines, but with the same characters basically in both storylines, and there were 18 regular characters.
Right.
That means I had 36, different stories to remember because of different storylines. It is daunting, but it's not as tough when they're not flying and traveling through time. There's, I mean, I could do it. I have, I've written group books and, done that stuff. But yeah, they were never they were never on a bucket list for me.
Mm-hmm. But so, did you notice a difference?
That's what I said. Damn it! That's me. No,
did you notice a difference in Paul Levitz when he first started doing the Legion, and then once he came back and really established his legacy as the Legion guy?
No, not really. I mean, he's not one of those types of people. He's he's really a very genuine person. There's no, I don't think it I think he sees it for what it he sees it for what it is. He understands being a fan, and because I've gotten around, I'm not impressed by famous people. I've been around a lot of them, and most of them it's just fine. You meet them, shake their hand, and it's fine. But then you meet somebody who's doing, a hero of some kind, and suddenly you turn into a babbling idiot. Yeah. And it's happened. It happens. I didn't know what the hell to say to Michael Chabon. I just stood there going, "I really like your book." Yeah, it was just. And I'm not even talking about Cavalier and Clay. I'm talking about the policeman's. I'm blanking on the name. It's a good book. It has policeman in the title.
Mm-hmm.
You managed to not manage. You created a lot. Like I said, you wrote a lot of comics. You created some new characters. You did a lot of storylines. I think you is it true you did the first version of Ambush Bug? You brought that you scripted the first appearance of that. Is that right?
Yeah, that was an issue of DC Comics Presents. We were plotting, Keith Giffen and I were plotting the story with Julie Schwartz, as we were going to do Superman and the New Doom Patrol. And so we're talking about the storyline and all that, and trying to come up with kind of a thing. And Keith goes, well, you know, this idea for a character, it's kind of like Bugs Bunny with a teleportation device. Like, okay, I'm good. Let's go.
I like that. Yeah, no, that's good. And you also did you relaunched Doom Patrol.
Yeah.
At that time, and you got to work with Steve Lytle, who recently passed, and you also worked with an up and comer named Eric Larson.
Yeah, whatever happened to him?
Seems to disappear. Yeah.
I got to work with Joe Staten first in 1977 on the thing, and then it was brought back again in '87. Was it? I think?
In 87. Yeah.
And that was, we launched with Steve Lytle, and great, beautiful work. I mean, it was, you know.
Oh yeah, look, it was brilliant.
Absolutely.
Yeah, good guy too. I mean,
yeah.
He was a shock, but yeah, and then you know, for circumstances that that whatever, he left the book, and Larson took over. Very different style from Steve.
Yes.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, but and you got to meet Arnold Drake before.
I met Arnold a couple of times. Yes, the last time, it was in 2000. Somebody had arranged for to bring up a whole bunch of, you know, Golden and Silver Age artists. Old guys came up to visit, and he brought them first to Marvel and then DC. And there was Arnold and Murphy Anderson and Larry Lieber. First and only time I ever met Larry Lieber. That was great. Actually, he said, you know, it took me we went to Marvel and we were introduced around, and nobody knew who I was. He says, I came here, and every office I'm introduced in, they go, wow, Larry Lieber, you know. It's like,
there's probably we could go into that, but
well, you know, I feel that was in 2000. I would feel that way if I went up to DC today. It was like, who are you? You know, because I don't anybody there who knows who I am anymore. You know.
Jeez.
But
oh, I doubt that. I'll bet. Well, anyway, yes, I bet they would.
Well, I did just do an intro for one of the one of the books, the Aquaman 80 years book.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Yeah, I did the intro to one of those chapters, sections for that book. Anyway, what was I saying?
Arnold Drake, you met him 2000.
So right, so I'm talking to Arnold, and you know, and I get onto Doom Patrol. And I go, you know, I relaunched it. Yeah, I know. And you know, he's not really saying anything. And I said, you know, my one real regret is that. You know, I was kind of following the trend. I should have stuck with what you created. I really think that was a big mistake that I didn't stick with what you came up with. And he kind of patted me on the shoulder and went, I know.
But you were very gracious, it seems, because one of our earlier interviews, we talked to Richard Case, and he mentioned how basically it seemed like you killed off basically everyone Grant wanted you to kill off before you
sure. I enjoy killing.
Yeah.
And sure. I've got kind of a reputation as a comic book serial killer.
Yeah.
You know?
Okay.
I got Aqua Baby. I got Vigilante. I got the Doom Patrol team members.
Yeah.
I killed the Thinker.
Oh, yeah.
And I offed Archie.
Yeah, that's right. Yes,
you did.
So
yeah,
that's pretty good score.
That's a good body count. Yeah,
but
I haven't got all those back either. So yeah,
But,
yeah.
Well, Adrian Chase has never come back. I am very pleased with that. They've never brought back Adrian Chase.
That is good. And then something too with this, did you ever in your wildest dreams think not only would there be a live action Doom Patrol show, but that they would have an episode that was a nod to your run on it?
No. Never. I mean, even when stuff started getting made, it's like, Doom Patrol, no way! You know?
Yeah.
And, no, that's all. But anytime any of that stuff pops up, you know, I've had a few things, you know, minor characters pop up on shows, and it's just, you know, really? Okay.
That's got to be cool to see. I'm still struggling. I think when I think about Marvel and DC, and we've talked to a number of people, we hear these stories. It feels like DC seems to hold on to their history maybe a little bit easier and better, or
it has a history.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, like Marvel does too now, but you know, I was thinking about this the other day. I think I write a column for 13th Dimension website, dimension.com. And one of the things, like, you know, back in the 60s, you know, Marvel was the very forward-looking, you know, face front, let's go, true believers kind of company. But they were kids. They were the newbies. You know, forget about the 30 years before as Atlas Comics. Marvel Comics was a new thing. Marvel Comics didn't have a history.
Yes.
You know, DC Comics goes back to 1935.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, so there's this massive history, and it's all on a timeline. You know, the fact that you have, you know, Wonder Woman, Batman, Superman, Green Lantern, Green Arrow, and Aquaman being the only superhero characters in all of comics to bridge the 1950s, you know, you know, without an interruption in their publishing, you know, they kind of, yeah.
Do you? So does it ever bother you that these characters haven't aged, or does that matter at all?
Doesn't matter at all, because, you know, you know, up until 1985, Superman had been eternally 34 years old.
Sure.
That was the that was the in-house kind of, yes. Clark is 34, Lois is 29, you know, Jimmy is probably 21, you know. That was kind of your base. You didn't mention it because once you mention it, you now have to start counting. The clock has started, you know?
Yeah.
But, you know, so he was that for you know, 40 years.
You know, it's funny. I've never met in all my years selling comics and going to cons, and I've never met a fan a customer who seriously was bothered by the aging of the characters. They were interested in the stories. People would joke like, "Oh, how could he be in Vietnam and then also be still 20? That doesn't make any sense." But nobody was really bothered by that.
No.
But it feels like the comic publisher, somebody gets bothered by that, and that's how we get these very strange.
Well, you know, the problem is that the fans took over the business.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, and it was inevitable. You know, it was bound to happen. You know, the first two generations of creators, you know, very few of the guys who started in the 40s were going because they were comic book fans. You know, you get a few, you get, you know, Joe Kubert and Gil Kane, and, you know, his kids, they read this stuff and they want. A lot of these guys just fell into it because of, work.
Right.
You know, and so, you know, this was a job. You know, Bob Haney, you know, he had the greatest attitude in the whole world. So continuity, what's that?
Yeah.
What works for this story?
Right.
And yeah, everybody used to bitch and moan, but you know, Bob Haney was writing for Murray Boltinoff, and Murray Boltinoff was the best-selling editor at DC.
Yeah.
You know, crappy Unexpected outsold, you know, brilliant, innovative House of Mystery.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, Ghosts with, you know, Leo Dorfman stories was doing better than, you know, Len Wein and Marv Wolfman and Jerry Conway stories in House of Secrets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go figure.
It always feels like a problem that doesn't need to be solved. And I don't know if you've followed the latest, you know, Joe and I talked about this a month or two ago.
Don't care about the Snyder Cut. Fuck them.
Yeah.
Talking about. Go ahead.
They in trying to solve the problem, it feels like they open up 500 new problems.
Again, you're pulling at the threads
Yes.
of this very shoddily made sweater.
Yes.
And you start pulling them apart, it's like, oh shit, that sleeve just fell off. Well, you shouldn't have asked, you know? It just, you know.
I'm curious, have you heard of the linearverse? Have you heard of this idea?
At DC?
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure. It's like, it sounds like they've just thrown their cards up in the air and gone, screw it, whatever. And, you know.
It was this explanation they rolled out that just everybody ages very, very slowly.
Why are they aging at all? Like, here, you've got this place where, you know, Dick Grayson is going from 12 to 20.
Right.
And, you know, and other teenage characters aren't.
Yeah.
And you can't, it doesn't matter because, you know, if you were really following that, then you would have, Superman would be about 110.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in real time, you know.
Yeah.
Bruce would be dead.
Sure.
You know? I mean, it's all, you know, so, and again, what difference does it make? Why are you, you know, I think there's this kind of this still lingering embarrassment about comics.
Yes.
People try to make them, try to give them weight and legitimacy by adding realism to them. You know, it's like, you know, the Marvel's new universe, the universe outside your window. No, it's not. It's not.
It's not. We've got people flying into the sun. It's not outside your window.
And if it is, consult a physician.
Yes.
It just, you know, so it's all this attempt, you know, by these people who are embarrassed by comic books. Yeah, and I think it's the same thing with a lot of the movie producers. You know, it's like the source material. You know, it's like, well, we like the concepts and the costume. Well, we'll fix the costumes.
Sure.
But you know, they have to make it better. They have to fix it. They have to, you know, well, we have to anchor. We have to make it so that it, you know, works in the real world.
Yeah, you have to have the bat symbol in the new movie made out of the gun that murdered his parents.
And you know, and now edging these, you're not edging them. You've tipped them over into psychotics.
Yes.
You know, my Batman smile. You know, my favorite page. There's a story that Denny O'Neil, Neil Adams did, and there's a city councilman raving and ranting about vigilantes in the city to Commissioner Gordon. And why, if that Batman was here, I'd show him. And Batman, meanwhile, is coming through the window behind the guy. And just as the guy is, you know, showing off how tough he is, Batman goes, boo.
Yeah.
And the guy turns and, you know, runs screaming out of the room.
Yeah, it's a fun scene.
Batman, Commissioner Gordon go, you know.
Yeah.
Wad, you know. So, you know, that's it. You know, Christopher Reeve flying, you know, that last moment of the Superman movie. He's flying off, you know.
No, it's not what people focus on. It's like, well, we have to explain this, but you know, Superman can fly Lois around into near orbit, and she's not going to freeze to death. It'll be fine. But we're going to explain this other aspect. It all seems very arbitrary.
Yeah,
it is. It's just, you know, it's people with, again, you know, a slight bit of embarrassment and too much time on their hands.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Aging very slowly. All right. You also launched Checkmate.
Yes, I did.
Yes, and that's had a resurgence lately. They're doing more with
coming
Checkmate.
back.
Well, I heard. My royalty checks are looking forward to it.
Perfect.
But yeah, how'd you come up with it?
Well, after, you know, we knew time was running out on Vigilante, I was desperate for a replacement title.
Okay.
There you go.
I came up with it. But the concept itself, I'm sure that's what you meant.
Well, no, that was
either way.
Yeah.
The concept was just kind of like what would make for an interesting, you know, DC didn't have a kind of a shield of its own.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And that's really what I was kind of come up with, was kind of a DC take on Shield, which means everybody wore identical costumes.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's DC's great power is to de-uniquify all their characters.
Yes, that seems to be the case.
You like Superman?
Yes.
Oh, Bottle City full of them.
Yeah.
Green Lantern, 3,600 more.
Everyone can be a Flash.
A million of them. So.
Yeah. I mean, we've had at least 2 Wonder Womans introduced this year, I think, and maybe more, depending on who wins this survey. So.
Well, the survey is going to be the 5th Wonder Woman of this year.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
I came up with a new. When I was editing Wonder Woman, we introduced Artemis,
Right?
That Mike Diodato, Bill Loeb's run.
Yeah.
But we always knew she was going back in after 10 issues. So
yeah. No, we talked to Bill the other week.
Oh yeah, how's he doing?
He's all right. He seemed to be doing all right.
Excellent, great guy.
Yeah, that was really good. You got to work on that Wonder Woman run with him. That was a lot of fun. Like I read that not too long ago. That was a fun run.
There was I took over. They had been doing the taco stand Wonder Woman.
Right. Yes.
I took over. Well, when I took over, that stopped. It was still going, but it stopped. I instituted what I call the Clark Kent Bruce Wayne rule.
Mm-hmm.
If you won't do it to Clark Kent or Bruce Wayne, you can't do it to Wonder Woman.
Sure.
Yeah.
And you'd never make them work in a taco stand.
That's true. That would be a bad idea. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's not have him do that.
So, so I worked with Bill on that. He wrote this Amazonia graphic novel, which was an Elseworlds.
Yeah.
That was just stunning. I mean, beautifully written and incredible art. So,
with all these characters that you wound up working on, you had kind of your, I don't want to say your pick, but you wound up crossing a lot of the DC universe. Like, which character that resonated best with you? Which was the one that you always found really easy to write?
Wow. I like Superboy a lot. I like writing Superboy. There was, he was saddled with a lot of that old thinking. The meek and mild character.
Yeah.
Overly meek and mild. I better not trip over that sidewalk, or they might suspect I'm Superboy. So I had a little bit of that. I got rid of that, and not that it lasted long because he was soon retconned out of existence. But
well, they brought in another dozen or so Superboys since then. So
to hang out with the Flashes and the Wonder Womans and the Green Lanterns.
Yeah.
Yes. I did. Who else? There was. I like writing my own characters. Like Arion was fun to write.
Yeah. Tell us about that. Tell us about Arion and how that came about, and what was that like creating kind of your own character there?
That was interesting. It was one of the earlier ones I did. Kind of all from scratch conceptually. Before that I'd created the new Doom Patrol, but working off of something there that was already existing. So that was fun. I mean, it was. I've admitted this all over the place. I was a big fan of Larry Niven's "The Magic Goes Away."
Oh yeah,
and that was just the basic idea for a world of Atlantis where the magic is fading, and here's the guy who's got to save it.
Yeah.
So that was my basic premise. Came from that, but the rest was kind of like I wanted to do kind of a snarky young sorcerer who actually turns out to be like 50,000 years old, and eventually revealed to be a god. But that came later.
I feel like the whole genesis with Arion, and it feels like a lot of the material you introduced there has been. You're bringing concepts up that have gotten popular, I would say, in the last 10 years as story tropes and things that people have done. I'm seeing a lot of influence to that series. So
yeah, that's nice to hear. You know,
we should continue more checks. Yeah.
Well, it depends on the form. You know, like a new title, like a new ongoing Checkmate title. Even though I have nothing to do with it creatively, and I'm sure there won't be much creative about it. But that's neither here nor there. I don't even know who's doing it actually. So
so was it Bendis who's writing the new Checkmate? Yeah.
Then, okay, all right. Yeah. Then there's hope that it will be overwritten.
Yeah, we can only hope.
Yeah.
But
hey, if it's a successful book, you know, I'm the creator. I have equity in it. You know.
Yeah.
That's great. You know, since you are a serial killer of comic characters, how did it feel to take on Supergirl just to have Marv kill her?
I resented that. I thought I should have killed her.
Yeah.
You know, if
you first.
Kill her.
Yeah.
You know, I just spent 2 years on it. More than that.
Yeah.
I wrote the feature in Superman Family before before she got her own title. So
you earned the right to kill her.
I did. Yeah.
Yeah.
I with kind of the opposite question to you. Who was a character that you just you wrote, but you could never feel like you liked this character?
Actually, it wasn't in comic books.
Okay.
It was a short story for an anthology, The Lone Ranger.
Okay.
I couldn't find a way into him for nothing. It was just like, you know, a mask and a horse.
I've heard that before with that character. Actually, a number of creators have said that there's nothing there to.
I mean, I eventually found a another story, other characters to have a story, and kind of have him come in near the end and go, "Ooh, look at that! It reminds me of my life." There was a backstory thing that they've got you write a story for an anthology, and you get sent these 50-page Bibles for these characters,
Mm-hmm.
And then when he was 4 years old and 7 days, he stubbed his toe. All right, that's good to know. I can use that.
Yeah. Another thing, like we talked a lot about heroes, and you.
I'm bitter. I'm embittered by my career, as you can tell from that.
Yeah. But we
wanted to make sure it's clear.
Yeah, but it's we're talking about heroes, but as a serial killer of heroes, who are some villains you really like to write?
Oh yeah.
Villains. Wow. Joker was fun. I did some Joker stuff in some DC Comics Presents and DC Challenge. I think I wrote him in DC Challenge. Yes.
Very nice.
Who else? I never really. It's funny. The villains were kind of like just handy things for the most part to kind of throw the heroes against. And I was thinking, I realized I didn't really do a lot of go-to villains when I did like established character like Superman.
Yeah,
I think the only Luthor story I think I did was in an issue of Superboy.
Yeah,
I don't think I used the character. I didn't use Terra Man. I did several stories with Terra Man for some ungodly reason. I don't know why, but
but the time period is really kind of one of the things people say is that there were a lot of villains. That villains were, there was a wide gallery of opponents for characters, and in the last 10, 15 years. There's a lot fewer villains. We're trying to understand the villains. We're trying to give the villains maybe a sympathetic side, and it's altered quite a bit. And you're wanting the heroes to kind of tackle real world problems as opposed to a toy man or something like that.
Yeah. I don't know. I honestly I don't read. I don't read current comics. I don't know what's going on at Marvel or DC other than through what I read online and roll my eyes about.
Yeah.
But in fairness, I have to say I'm not the audience.
Mhm.
Right. Right.
You know, I'm no longer the audience for this stuff. It's just, so if people enjoy it, that's great, and more power to them.
Yeah. I mean, looking at the sales charts, though, I don't know if there is an audience for some of these books, but
it's shrunk, for sure.
I'm teasing, but yes.
Look, when I came on staff at DC in 1991 as an editor,
Mhm.
I was given Dark Stars to edit.
Oh yeah.
I was told to be careful because it was getting near 65,000.
Yeah.
Was kind of the cutoff point of like you fall below that, and now 65,000 is what the top 90 percentile.
You're in the top 10 probably.
Yeah, no, for sure. But what was that like editing compared to writing comics for you?
Yeah, editing is editing is a job. There's a lot of paperwork, and there's a lot of schedules, and dealing with idiots. Not the freelancers, the people
Sure.
you report to. Because I reported to a lot of idiots.
Yeah. Yes, I can relate.
But you'd recognize the names of my idiots.
Yes, that's true. Yeah. You had better idiots. There you go.
I had some great idiots. Like Dan Raspler, but I won't mention anyway.
Yeah.
But the actual working on the creative side, it's the fun part of writing. Without the work, it's the problem solving, the creative problem solving, and things like that. That's great, and just I like the work. I enjoyed it. It's fun. I mean, it's again. There's but it's a job. It is it's just like writing comics is a job.
Right.
There are people waiting, standing over your shoulder, breathing down your neck, and yelling at you.
Yeah.
No matter what.
And those are just the fans.
Yes. There came this point in through the internet that the fans thought they were part of the business.
Sure.
Yeah.
I can't tell you the number of personal financial questions that people just ask me routinely on Facebook about, like, oh, I hope you got paid for that.
Yeah,
I get paid for that. This thing wasn't published. Well, I hope they paid you. Yeah, they assigned it to me. They paid me. That's how it works. But then they ask, like, well, how much do and this and that? Wow, that's none of your business.
It is. We did slip into a world of you don't ask about somebody else's finances, their religion, or their politics, and that went out the window roughly 15 years ago.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that window should be closed again, like as much as possible with boarded up.
I'll readily talk about religion and politics, but
Sure.
But it's not a life. It's like I'm not on Facebook, to be your friend. Frankly, I'm friendly, but it's like Facebook is a business thing to me.
Yes.
Yeah.
You're on there, and again, it's fun. I work at home and live with one other person, and she doesn't think I'm funny anymore. So it's great to have that outlet, but. Yeah, there are certain things like, you go back, you look at my feed, and it's like, I'm not talking to you about my personal life, am I?
Yeah. Is there any book in particular or creative team you put together that you were like particularly proud of? Like you look back now and you're like, that was a damn good book I edited.
Yeah, there's a few. Again, the Wonder Woman run with Bill Loebs and Mike Diodato.
Yeah.
And the following run with Byrne. I thought he did a great. Who else? There was Phil Winslade, who did that Wonder Woman graphic novel I mentioned that Bill wrote, Amazonia. It's weird. I'm trying to think of like who I put together. A lot of them kind of come in.
Yeah.
But I did give Ethan Van Sciver his start. So,
Oh, no.
never mind.
Well, the whole video has changed now. Yes.
Oh no. But yeah, I find it interesting how so much of that Wonder Woman, like all the stuff you were working on, kind of got memory holds for a long time. Like a lot of those trades and collections were only fairly recent, I think, except for, I think the Diodato trade came out like a few years ago or so. But it seemed like there was this big gap that everyone went like, well, George Perez worked on the book, and then Gail Simone and Greg Rucka, and that there was this like weird like 15-year gap where people were like, and who knows what happened to Wonder Woman?
It's a mystery.
Yeah,
I guess I feel that way about a lot of my stuff at DC. It's like, it's like, none of this is, like, I don't think I'm ever going to see an Arion, collection.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure Checkmate's never going to happen, no matter what, And, Checkmate would make a really good TV show.
Yeah.
It would. Yeah, absolutely.
You could actually tie the whole, like Marvel, like S.H.I.E.L.D., at Marvel, the Marvel TV, you could tie, the whole thing together through something like Checkmate. But,
it feels like the current launch, there's at least some desire to make that happen. But I mean, it feels very, at this point in movies and production and things that are getting put together, that one feels like a real long shot. But
sure, I know that because my name's on it. So,
but they put an omnibus out of your Doom Patrol run.
Yeah. But which was the last run of Doom Patrol to get the omnibus run?
I think it was. I think was Burn they did, and then yours. I think like
it was Burn before mine. Yeah.
I think they did Burn before yours.
Okay, and not for nothing. I'm a big fan of John's work, but I think my Doom Patrol more seminal than his.
Yeah, I don't think it'll ever be referenced in that show, but yours has been. So
yes, not every idea is a winner, I guess. Is the
no, it's
no, it's fine. Yeah, no, I don't get it, but it's kind of like, look, I know I was a steady B writer for DC for in my time. I was never on a superstar project, and but I like to think I contributed little bits and pieces here and there, and hopefully they'll survive. But
well, I mean, no, absolutely, you contributed a massive piece of their history at this point. I mean, and now it can live again because everything matters, and there is all the crises have been erased, and it all works at the same time simultaneously in the linearverse. So
yeah,
you mentioned novels. You certainly have written things beyond comic books. You've worked, and I'd like to talk about that, but I also I have to ask. So you started writing for the Weekly World News.
Yes. And,
tell me about that. How was that?
I knew the editor. The executive editor was or editor in chief. I forget his title. Jeff Rovin.
Okay.
I've known Jeff since the early '70s when he was Joe Kubert's assistant at DC, and it's just we happened to run into each other, and one thing led to another, and he said, "Oh, you'd be good. Why don't you try?" And I submitted some pieces and started selling, and I was a fairly regular contributor, and then he was. It'd been based in Florida. Jeff lived in Manhattan, but the paper was based in Florida, and it's part of the AMI, American Media, the same company that owns National Enquirer and other fabulous papers.
Finest news.
Fabulous, just fabulous magazines. The guy who owns the company is named Pecker.
Okay, sure.
Aptly named.
Yeah.
So anyway, Jeff was wanted to move, wanted to have the staff in New York, and he didn't want any of them to be the people who were doing it in Florida because he didn't think they were very good. So anyway, eventually he managed to get the thing moved, and I was hired to be some kind of editor with a very fancy title, and I continued writing for it and editing the paper until the end.
And was it an easy transition from comic books to the Weekly World News? Was that a?
I gotta say, the Weekly World News was probably the best gig I've ever had. It was, I was working with friends.
Mm-hmm.
We hired Bob Greenberger, who I'd known, since we're kids doing fanzines.
Nice.
We hired Maddie Blaustein, who had been working at DC.
Nice.
She was our Photoshop, photo manipulator, and we hired Christine. I'm blanking on her last name. I'm sorry, but she was also working for DC in the layout department. She did our, she was our layout manager. So they were all like, and in fact, I start talking to the AMI, production manager. Mm-hmm. And he looks at me and goes, "You go to Tilden High School?" It turns out we went to high school together. So it was,
I love it.
So it was just,
That's awesome.
Yeah, and plus, we had to turn out this 48-page paper a week, black and white, and so we were usually done by Thursday. We had, I think our closing was 3:00 on Friday. And we're usually pretty much done on Thursday. And it was just easy and fun and just goofy. I mean, I used to get these, I would get these great phone calls from people, who wanted to give us tips and news and stories. And usually, you play along. We were supposed to keep the fiction up, even on the phone. It was like, nope. World's unreliable paper. Every word is true except where it says on page 3 in 4-point type that it's not. But I got a call once from this guy, and he informs me he's a pastor and he's written a book, and it's about his discovery of the location of the Garden of Eden.
Yep.
And I think he's goofing on me, so I'm playing along. And then I realized he's not goofing on me. He's very, very serious, and he wants to publish. And now I'm getting into an area of, I'm uncomfortable. This man is obviously unhinged, and I shouldn't be leading him on. But I also eventually I just go. I said, you know what? This story is. I said that. Finally, I said to him, that everything we print is made up. It's all fiction. He goes, "Oh, I know, but this is real." So I said, you know what, this is too big for us. And I gave him the phone number of the New York Times. So I kept all the other New York papers' phone numbers handy.
That would be handy, yeah. And well, that sounds like fun. We're going to work with friends and very creative. I like that idea of you're maintaining the illusion, because you would then you'd go work for or you do the WWE Kids magazine.
Yes.
Which is a different realm where we keep up the illusion of what's happening.
Oh, absolutely. Well, the founding editor of Weekly World News said, if a guy calls me up and tells me that his toaster is talking to him, I ask him to put the toaster on the line.
Yeah.
So that was how we worked. It was like, let's hear it. The wrestling was very different.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
Not as probably not. I have a close friend who did a lot of work for Vince McMahon and said it was a lot less enjoyable. Well,
I mean, it was okay. It's just it was big. I worked at the office in Stamford, Connecticut, which was great because I lived 10 minutes away. I was living it was a 10-minute drive in the morning. But they were weird. It was just like, it was a nice enough offices. You had a great cafeteria, had gyms, and so, the whole bit. And, the production manager, whoever, this woman comes to me, I'm like, she said, "Oh, we were looking for you on the other day. Why went out to lunch?" She goes, "Well, we prefer you stay in the building for lunch."
Yeah.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah.
I kept going out for, sure, yeah. And I just kept going out for lunch. But it was just and I was right near, what's the son, Sean's office.
Yeah, Sean.
Yeah. So and he was supposedly running the publishing end of things, which, from what I've heard of Sean, makes a lot of sense.
Yes.
Because of the state the magazines were in even then.
Yeah.
But it just wasn't for me. I mean, I knew nothing about. I was in fact the way I got the job was I was at DC doing freelance staff work.
Mm-hmm.
I was working for the licensed publishing department, and I was putting together the Showcase Presents books.
Yeah.
I was doing 50 of them, and just making the book maps and gathering all the material, and so when they were ready to publish, they just pull them and
Yeah.
And so the receptionist, knowing I was there and knowing I had been there forever and knew all the answers, put this guy through to me, and he was looking for an editor for the kids magazine, and could I recommend anybody? And so I recommended me.
That's always a good plan.
Yes.
Yeah. That's the right way.
Yeah.
Tony Romano. That's his name. Yes.
It feels like maybe comparing the two, that the Weekly World News understood that it was fiction, but was keeping up the illusion, and the WWE maybe somewhat understood it was fiction, but was very angry that anybody would question it was fiction. It's just
they were like, don't ever, we don't talk about Fight Club, kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And it's like, so your viewers are morons and they don't know this is scripted.
Yeah. It's a weird. There's a lot of parallels people draw between wrestling and video games and comics, and you work in all of them, so that's really awesome.
Yes, I did actually. Yeah.
It's also
in wrestling or video games. So
yeah. It's also funny that you wrote comics with Peacemaker in it, then you did stuff with the WWE, and now John Cena's Peacemaker.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah. Small world.
Yes.
Tell me about you did the work at Archie, and you won a GLAAD award for this Life of Archie.
Nominated for
nominated. Sorry, no, I got it wrong. Yeah, there. But it was that was a pretty powerful thing for Archie at the time. I mean, you that whole storyline. I mean, all of it was very different from what they had been doing.
Yeah, no, I give them a lot of credit for letting me do it. It was I was hired to write the monthly, the married life stories, and they said from the start, that just go for it. These are real. This is Archie in the real world, where you could actually do Archie in the real world.
Yeah,
and and when the first thing I suggested was we kill Miss Grundy.
Mm-hmm.
And I went, go for it.
Yeah, keeping with the serial killer, motif.
I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then, later on, whatever I throw out, gun control, gay marriage. They said, Kevin's getting married, you're writing it. But any other storyline, the gun violence stuff, Hill Blossom's breast cancer.
Mm-hmm.
Was it Blossom? Yeah, Blossom, right?
It did well. I mean, I think it wound up being a turning point for Archie a little bit. I'm going to make a very shaky point. But I think you wound up coming in, and the Archie that existed after you did this work has been different. Like you were.
The publisher has said that to me. You know, even I mean, you know, it wasn't my idea originally. It was, you know, Michael Uslan originally came up with the concept, but you know, like I'm the one who did it. So I'll take it.
You should. I mean, you
I'm a movie producer and makes trillions of dollars, and I don't. So I'm going to get credit for this one.
You should take it. I think you moved the property that was really needed. It needed to move, and it set it up. Now you have, you know, TV shows, and you have all this. I mean, it's basically taken, I think, a franchise that was
moribund.
Yeah, and it's brought it back to life in a big way. So
I mean, I think I don't know why they chose me to write it, frankly.
Yeah.
Prior to being given the assignment, I had written like a handful of, you know, teen Archie stories for, you know, the digest and things like that. But, you know, I turned out, if I do say so myself, to be the right guy for the job. I mean, I think my feelings about about that very issue, about the reality in comics, you know, kind of set me up for it. I didn't have the inclination to stay true to the Archie, you know, that type of story. I mean, I think I was very true to the characters. I found them incredibly easy to write. You know, I had them my whole life. I kind of like, you know, my very first Archie story was, you know, Archie volunteers to take Mrs. Lodge's dog to pick up Mrs. Lodge's dog from the groomer and bring it to the dog show.
Yeah.
And of course, you know, he trips and this and that, and he falls but he manages to save the dog. I was just, you know, after writing that, I went, oh, right, that's Archie. He will kill himself. He will fall over himself to do a favor.
Yeah.
To see, you know, and that's why at the end, when, you know, the guy's pulling the trigger and about to shoot Kevin Keller, Archie jumps between, you know, the shooter and Kevin.
Yeah.
He hasn't done that, you know, for any of his friends, because that's Archie.
Yeah.
And then, you know, I did a Jughead story where he fools everybody into digging up his backyard for him to install a new septic system by making think there might be buried treasure from Al Capone buried there.
Yes.
Yeah, and there's Jughead in a nutshell. You know, the laziest guy in Riverdale, but he's also the smartest.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting though, because again, I feel like there was some memory holing here, because you revitalized it, and then Mark Waid and Fiona Staples came in a few years later, and then the news sites, at least, and all of that seemed to be acting like someone's finally daring to revamp Archie. And
you know, again, I am B writer boy. I came in, I do it, and it's like, oh, that's very good. That's very close. Mark Waid.
Yeah.
You know, so that's the way it is. I mean, you know, I am there.
I think it's come back a little bit. I agree. There was that moment, but it feels maybe something since Riverdale has been more popular. I hear your name come up a lot more, and it's really it's kind of reinforcing that there was a transitional moment, like a stake in the ground, and it was your stake that you put in the ground that caused these other things to happen. So I'm glad for that. I think it's I
am too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have the pull to bring back Archie 3000? I loved Archie 3000.
No, but I wanted to bring back the you know, the superhero Archie guys.
Right. Yeah.
Well, my suggestion for the follow-up was not to do a regular ongoing thing, but to do a kind of an Elseworlds thing where you just you can treat Archie the same way we were doing it in Life with Archie, but take all these different worlds, take the superhero guys and take the, you know, whatever version of Archie you want, and do 6-issue arcs about those stories, about you know, that version.
You could make a whole like Archie multiverse, and then you could give Grant Morrison credit.
No.
Well, it's more of a linear verse.
That's true.
The multiverse was created on my birthday.
Yeah.
So,
absolutely.
June 14th, when in Flash 123, when he zooms, when he dimensional barriers, and then Keystone City, he's looking at he looks at a newspaper on the newsstand, and it's the Keystone Gazette, and the date on the newspaper is June 14th, 1961. The birth date of the multiverse, and June 14th is my birthday. So
there you go. No, it is funny. I always chuckle because the multiverse and this whole concept of other realities and all the rest. It's like, yes, this was invented in 20 years ago and nothing. Grant Morrison's a great writer, but I mean,
sure.
You've been reading comics. This was not the first time that came around. It was
that would be Bob Kanigher.
Yeah, exactly.
And Billy Schwartz in Showcase number 4. Where they they weren't setting up a multiple universe. It was just, Julie just thought it would be cute to have a reference to the previous Flash and have it be the inspiration for Barry Allen. I used to read the comic book adventures of a character called Flash, He didn't really exist, except we later find out that, Gardner Fox was dreaming these Flash of Earth 2 stories, and they really did exist. And that's how the multiverse was introduced.
Did you ever get to meet Bob Kanigher?
Oh, yeah.
Nice. What was he? Because he is someone currently, I think, is greatly undercredited.
Yeah.
Bob was a mad genius.
Yeah.
And I emphasize the mad. He was a nut job. He was a braggart. He was Major Blimp. He was, he had a story for everything. He was a scar on his cheek, and tell you about his very high nasal voice and very good way of speaking. He was born in the Bronx, and and my dueling scar from Heidelberg. Yeah. I think so. He did, skiing down the mountains with, whatever starlet, whatever. I don't know. He was always full of shit. And he was also a close talker, and he wore tweed.
That's the worst. No.
Bob could talk in my face all day. I thought he was the funniest freaking thing. I love talking to him. For all this nuttiness, this guy was pretty fucking good.
Sure.
And, look at what he wrote. That Sergeant Rock stuff that he wrote, and the Metal Men. The Metal Men was created like Friday. He's leaving work, and it's like we don't have anything for Showcase for Monday to assign on Monday, and he goes home and over the weekend creates and writes.
Yeah.
For his Metal Men Showcase story.
Yeah.
And it's a great concept. I mean, it's not like a thrown together thing.
Yeah. No, it is brilliant. I mean, and the world will excuse a lot of eccentricities if you're brilliant. That's
yes.
And he was a fascinating guy. In fact, I wrote a murder mystery set in the 1950s in the comics industry. The same old story, available on Amazon.
Ooh.
And a thinly disguised Bob Kanigher is the murder victim.
Ooh,
very nice.
Bob.
I do. I'll make sure I put a little note at the beginning of this. But if you're listening to the interview at this point, please do check the description. There's going to be links to a number of things from Paul Kupperberg. You got to go check out. But tell us about it today. What are you up to today? What are your current projects?
Yeah.
Well, I'm preparing a few books ready for publication. Just came out with the Son of the Unpublished Comic Book Scripts of Paul Kupperberg, which is the second book of unpublished scripts of mine. The first one came about 5 or 6 years ago. It was all the unpublished stories that were meant for the revamp of Supergirl and Superboy.
Nice.
Crisis, but it got nipped in the bud because of Crisis. So I 5 scripts that were never, 2 were drawn, but never published. And so I put those scripts. Yeah. Second has a bunch of Green Lantern stories I wrote. for Legends of the DCU. One's a 3-part arc called Emerald Interlude, which is takes place during the whole Emerald Twilight thing, and kind of answers a few questions that bugged me about the story. But the few times I've ever gone, no, that's wrong. That needs to be fixed, and wrote to try to fix it.
Real quick, the first, you said this is the son of is the first book still in print? Can people still get their hands on that as well? Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Called The Unpublished Comic Book Scripts of Paul Kupperberg, and it's also available on Amazon.
People got it. So I get a lot of, we do live streams. Joe and I talk to people all the time. I'd say one of the recurring requests people have is that they love they want to find these scripts that never made it. And they want to see this kind of untold history. And so here's a guy who's written over 1,000 books for DC, and there's 2 books out there that you can get your hands on for that. That's awesome.
And there will be a third. I have enough for a third that'll come out.
That's excellent. Yeah, people got to check that out.
And I also recently published JSA RAGNAROK, which is an original novel that I originally wrote in 2005. Variety of American novel, but the publisher who had licensed it and was publishing it died, and his company went bankrupt, so the book never got published. And now, 16 years later, finally, it is here, also available on Amazon.com.
Very nice.
Actually, I spent the last week doing revisions on a novel that's going to be published by a small press next year. It's a young adult novel called Supertown, and it's superhero based and themed.
Excellent.
And what else do I got?
This is superhero based and themed YA, but it's new characters. It's not.
Yeah, it's about a kid who lives in you can't get here from there. You can't get there from here town on the Jersey Shore, and he wants to be a superhero so much he wears a costume under his clothes in case he has a secret origin. And then, due to a series of weird and strange things, real superheroes and villains do come to town. Yeah, and already inclusive.
That's awesome. I hope that does. I had it with the folks who do Primer, which is one of the books that is all ages for DC, and that one's doing very well. But there does seem to be a thing where if you're doing original characters, you do much better than if you're trying to take an existing, like, let's make Batman a teenager and see what happens.
Everybody, they know they're not teenagers. They want the grown-up Batman. They want the I think so. I mean, it's I wrote this. Actually, I started it when I think my kid was 3 when I started it, and he's turning 25 this month. So there was a big gap there between finishing it. But, it's eventually it all comes around. And I've got another young adult novel, a standalone, not superhero based. That's with my agent, and I'm going to be publishing a couple other books this year through Crazy 8 Press, which is a small publishing hub I'm in with guys like Peter David and Michael Jan Friedman and Bob Greenberger and
Crazy 8 Press,
and Peter David's got to be one of the only comic writers who's active now that's possibly written more comics than you. Like, I'm trying to think.
Actually, it turned out several years ago when Paul Levitz was doing that giant hernia book he wrote.
Yes.
The History of DC. I haven't read it yet because I can't afford to hire a spotter to hold it for me while
that's what it's going to take, yeah.
But he called me one day and he said, I was doing some research and I came to this, and he goes, you're the 18th most prolific writer, at DC. And it's like, wow, that's cool. That's nice to know. And now I think I have been surpassed by, Bendis and Jeff Johns and,
Sure. Maybe Bendis. I don't know. I'll bet Johns doesn't have, I mean, he writes not a lot though. It's in short bursts.
Yeah.
But he did.
He did, but he's a big Hollywood guy now, so he wouldn't talk to any of us. He's
Who wants to talk to him?
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah,
but yeah, no, that's great. And Crazy 8 Press sometimes has books on Kickstarter too, right?
Oh, sure. I mean,
Yeah.
it's we're all, we're not a publisher per se.
Mm-hmm.
We're a publishing hub. It's the idea is, well, there are 10 of us now in Crazy 8, but the idea is that 10 voices are louder than one. So
yeah,
well, let's all work under a common umbrella and promote each other. So
yeah, that's a smart move in today's industry. And then you're working with Pixie, is that right, for webcomics?
Well, yeah. I mean, we haven't done. Several years ago, Roger McKenzie, Mort Todd, and I grew out of a Facebook page, but we started. We started a little company called Charlton Neo Comics.
Mm-hmm.
We appropriated the old Charlton Comics names because nobody was using it. So what the hell? And we were publishing a bunch of comics and online comics and physical, print comics for a while. Eventually that kind of peters out. I mean, I wrote about 300 pages worth of material for that.
Wow.
Over the few years, and self-publishing, small press, not the way to riches. So,
right. Yeah.
So that kind of petered out. But last year I published my my guide to writing comics.
Mm-hmm.
And I did it through, with the Charlton Neo Press imprint. So,
nice.
And that's Kupperberg's Illustrated Guide to Writing Comics, also available where on Amazon.
There we go.
Very nice. Paul, it's been just a massive pleasure chatting with you. I wanted to say, Joe, did you have any other questions here? I mean, I've just been enjoying listening to you and kind of hearing all this. Your books. I think we'll have links to all of this, but I really recommend people go check it out. Paul, any thoughts for this industry, the people in it?
I haven't had a thought since about, I don't know. No, I mean, it's like, I don't know this industry anymore, really. It's a very different place that, I left DC in 2006.
Yes.
And, it is such a radically different world.
Yes.
I really don't know who's at DC Comics anymore. I mean, I think a few people I know from the olden days, probably mostly on the business and side and stuff, are there. But, it's like, I don't know what's going on. And I don't follow the books because, there's not enough space left in my head to try to remember all this stuff anymore.
I mean, in fairness, it's not completely clear if DC knows who's at DC right now either. So if that helps any.
I know periodically I learn that a bunch of people I used to know are no longer there.
Yes.
Yeah.
There was something, I feel kind of like I grew up at DC. Not with DC Comics, but at DC Comics. When I was a fan in the early 70s, and once, they knew your face, they knew who you were, you could walk in there. You could hang out in the coffee room. You can sit on the couch at the end of the hall. You can have, there was Neil Adams or Murphy Anderson, or I would sit there and talk to Tex Blaisdell and Bill Trout, when they were sitting at drawing boards, and just got to hang with these guys, or get talked closely to by Bob Kanigher. My first stint at DC, it was in 1977, 78, and I had a cubicle which in the hallway, divided the office in half. And my office was like, Julie Schwartz was down this way and Murray Boltinoff was down that way.
Yeah.
Between them was more editors. So guys would just hang out at my desk. Dave Verne would hang out at my desk and we'd just talk. So, it was to me. And now it's like, I can't go home anymore. They've moved and not given me a forwarding address.
I mean, even without the current Corona situation and everything else, we lost that. What you're describing has been gone for a while.
Sure. I mean, I know when I was on staff at the time, it was still, everything was a passkey, and and you understand that, of course. You can't have people.
Yeah. A Snyder Cut fan will get in there if you don't have a passkey.
The assholes and me wandering around and bothering people.
Yeah.
It's just it's I don't know, maybe the now having talked to a number of people here, the camaraderie that you described just sounds wonderful.
Yeah.
Sounds like that would be a really key driver to telling great stories as well. And, I'm not sure it's been replaced with anything, which is kind of a shame.
Yeah.
Well, Paul, thank you so much for the time here today. Just getting a chance. Hope everybody definitely goes. First of all, you could just go to Amazon, put in Paul Kupperberg, and just see a lot of things. But we'll have some specific links. Please go check it out. Definitely, if you've been interested in those scripts that never got published, hey, here's your chance. And
my comics book, which goes wonderfully with those scripts.
Exactly. Get the whole set.
Absolutely.
Now, Papa taught me never let a plug go by.
Please. Yes. And it's, people got to remember that these things are out there. You can go get them pretty easily. So please do. And well, Joe, thank you very much for, of course, as always, joining me. And Paul,
yes,
I hope we can
great.
I hope we can talk to you again very soon.
Be a pleasure. It was a pleasure, and hopefully it would be a pleasure next time, but we'll judge that.
Fair enough.
That's very fair.